What do Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner have in common with Aldrich Ames and Robert Hansen? Well, the latter were two of the most dangerous Americans to ever spy for Russia, and the damage they caused our nation cost hundreds of American lives and compromised intelligence. Hi, my name is Suri Crowe, and you're watching the MeidasTouch Network. Vladimir Putin has been playing the long game with the United States for the better part of 30 years now, in his quest to rebuild the Soviet empire by infiltrating our political system, first through the NRA, then infecting the Republican Party via the white evangelical churches, and so on. Just look at this crackhead post by Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who recently posted this. The U.S. is bankrolling the systematic persecution of Christians in Ukraine. Activists scream, quote, human rights until Christians are the victims. Stop sending American tax dollars to Ukraine. And then Ostap Yarish clapped back at her. The only systematic persecution of Christians in Ukraine is being carried out by Russia. As of April 2025, Russia has destroyed or damaged over 600 religious sites in Ukraine. Will you condemn this as well? And I can personally attest, I have a friend in Ukraine who is a pastor, and he and his fellow church members are constantly having to go underground into bunkers, hiding from Russian drones and bombs. So she's lying. They're completely compromised. And it appears that, Vladimir Putin has succeeded by placing a Russian asset in the White House in Donald Trump, a pro-Russia Secretary of State in Marco Rubio. Yep. So all those Democratic senators who voted to confirm Rubio, thinking that he would be the reasonable voice in the Trump administration, I really hope they're super satisfied with that horrendous choice to confirm Rubio. And now Vlad has American emissaries doing the bidding of the Kremlin in negotiations for the fate of Ukraine. Here is Rick Wilson of the Lincoln Project.
If you let Russia get away with the partition and dismantlement of Ukraine, they will inevitably learn the lesson that nothing will stop them. They will go for Poland. They will go for the Baltics. Europe is in danger. And as much as we would like to think, all of our trade is with China, you know what? If Europe's economy blows up because of a war, we're in a world of hurt, folks. If Europe's economy blows up because of Vladimir Putin feeling like he can invade anybody he wants to invade and do whatever he wants, because Steve Witkoff took money for development deals and redevelopment deals and mineral deals after he was a key factor in keeping Trump on Putin's side, there's no fire in hell hot enough for that man. I will say this because I like to remember that there are normal people in the world. In any other administration, Steve Witkoff would never have entered that room. He is not terribly smart. He is not terribly sophisticated. The Russians have played him like a fool from the word go. For the Russian sycophants inside the administration, like J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth, they love this. They love watching Steve Witkoff be the fall guy. They love watching Steve Witkoff go in the room and tell Vladimir Putin that his farts don't stink. They love that Stephen Witkoff is counseling the Russians. I want to make sure you think about this phrase. An American diplomat, an American special government employee, a presidential envoy, is taking the side of the Russians to educate them on how to manipulate Donald Trump. It defies imagination. But I am not exaggerating when I tell you, once again, it is my firm and honest belief that Stephen Witkoff is as dangerous to this country as any of the worst spies of the last 100 years. Stephen Witkoff is as dangerous to the security and safety of the world as any traitor who has betrayed this country before, because he is a traitor to this country. He is putting Putin first. He's not playing a diplomatic game of sucking up to Putin to get him to do something we want. Putin has already played that game with him. Vladimir Putin is the single source of more danger and peril for the future of this world and the future of Europe than anybody else.
Those are some heavy words, and Rick Wilson knows. He's studied Russia for a long time. I firmly believe that he's right. Vladimir Putin is calculating and smart as the day is long. He knows exactly how to pluck the strings of people and play them. A former top-level KGB agent, and someone like Trump or Kushner or Witkoff or the many others that he's played over the years, they just walk right into his spider web. It's my belief that a lot of people have started to tune out the war in Ukraine as it has droned on, pun intended. And they're like, yeah, Ukraine, it's been 4 years, whatever, moving on. But here's why you should pay very close attention to what is happening in Ukraine, because what's happening in Ukraine will impact the entire world order. Putin's goal is to rebuild the Soviet Empire and to expand Russian imperialism by taking over Europe. Yes. And the first step to doing that is to dominate Ukraine. Trump's pro-Russian regime is only too happy to help. Here is Senator Chris Murphy with a quick overview.
Serious corruption of American foreign policy ever is being talked about inside the Trump administration. It's being described as a peace plan to end the Russian war in Ukraine. But if you look at the details, it has nothing to do with peace. It is a business deal to make the people around Donald Trump rich. It's just corruption through and through. Let me tell you the story. According to the Wall Street Journal, last month, Vladimir Putin sent the head of his sovereign wealth fund to negotiate an end to the Ukraine war with Steve Witkoff, who is one of Trump's billionaire buddies, also one of his national security advisors. They met in Miami Beach. Jared Kushner was there too. Putin didn't send his foreign minister, and this is important. He sent his business deals guy, the guy who controls the billions of money that are produced by Russia's oil operations. Why do you do that? Because he knows that the way you get Trump's people to agree to sell out Ukraine is to offer up a deal to make Trump's billionaire friends even richer. Here are some of the examples. ExxonMobil right now is in secret discussions with Rosneft, that's Russia's largest state energy company, about a massive gas project in Russia's Far East, something that can only happen if the war is over and sanctions on the company are lifted. Rich Trump donors are right now trying to get in on the action as well. One donor just recently paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to a lobbyist that's really close to Trump's inner circle to try to buy the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. That's a Russian gas pipeline. Once again, something that is only possible for these investors to get rich on if the war is over and the U.S. lifts its sanctions. Another close Trump associate is in talks about acquiring a stake in a Russian Arctic gas project. So that's what Trump's billionaire friends get. But what does Ukraine get? Nothing. This deal sells out Ukraine. In fact, this deal would require Ukraine to give to Russia territory that Russia doesn't even currently control. It provides amnesty for all of the war crimes that Putin has committed. It creates no real security guarantees for Ukraine moving forward. This peace deal is a disaster for Ukraine. But it frankly shows how savvy Vladimir Putin is. He knows the way to get to Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff. Pay them off. Pay their friends off. Do favors for their billionaire crowd. And if you do that, then they're prepared to sell out Ukrainian security, European security, and American national security. This is a terrible deal for Ukraine, but it's a great deal for Trump and Witkoff's billionaire buddies.
Just look at the national security policy that the Trump regime quietly put out last week. It basically outlines all of the Kremlin's talking points. Like, I can't believe I'm saying this about America. Like, this is insane, including cultivating resistance to Europe's current trajectory within European nations. Like, it's completely anti the European Union. And essentially, it lays out reasons to end NATO, the post-World War II alliance that has kept Western world stability since World War II, and it is Putin's wish and Trump's command to destroy it. Yeah, some scary shit, people. Speaking of, here is Putin's orange puppet in a brand new interview with Politico.
It's not easy with Russia because Russia has the upper hand, and they always did. They're much bigger. They're much stronger in that sense. I give Ukraine I give the people of Ukraine and the military of Ukraine tremendous credit for the, bravery and for the fighting and all of that. But, at some point, size will win generally.
Unbelievable. This is an American president talking about an ally this way, or former ally, I guess. Up until Trump refused to support Ukraine, by the way, Russia was losing this war. Sure, the Biden administration could have done more, but Republicans in Congress also blocked a key defense package that delayed crucial aid to Ukraine for months, if you recall. And even with those setbacks, Putin was still on his heels. His army was retreating and his losses were mounting by the day. Then Trump unbelievably came back into the picture and everything shifted. Russian sanctions eased. He publicly pressured Zelensky in that infamous Oval Office beatdown with J.D. Vance. And suddenly Putin's situation improved. Now, Trump's Russian-aligned voices are pushing a peace plan that leaves Ukraine with nothing and opens the doors for these billionaires to strip mine Ukraine's rare earth resources, even if that means risking and destroying the stability of the Western world order. It's mind-bending. Here's the former NATO commander calling Trump Putin's bitch.
Inconséquent et incohérent, mais bon.
Ça revient un peu au même.
Là, donc hier, c'était...
Si on disait il est dingue, ça reviendrait au gros à la même chose.
Non, il travaille pour Poutine, mais pas dingue.
Très bien.
Mais je veux dire par là, Poutine, pour lui, Trump, c'est le rêve. Il a un gars qui fait tout ce qu'il lui demande.
This is an AI photo, but it really does describe what's happening here, is that Putin is just dog walking Trump, just dog walking him. Under Trump, we have given up our soft power through USAID. We have given up our diplomatic power. We are willing to give up our superpower status. Before this, it was China and the United States, the two global superpowers. Now we've just folded, rolled over, and we're doing this and giving it up to weaker, economically failing nations. Russia's economy is terrible, you guys. It's horrible. Trump is putting Saudi Arabia, a country with a smaller GDP than Italy's, over American interests. This is madness. Biden, remember, walking bravely into Kyiv, Antony Blinken, fortifying their defenses, bravely doing things. Now we have Trump, a coward, rolling over for these autocrats in failing nations, for MBS, for freaking Putin, selling off Ukraine, joining in genocide with Israel, and selling off America for parts, literally selling off our great nation for parts, just so these broligarchs, these traitors, can make even more money than they already have. It's just disgusting. An American emissary coaching the Russians on how to manipulate an American president. Here's a reporter from the Times of London.
And in the call, Steve Witkoff is speaking to Yuri Yushakov, who's a foreign policy advisor to Vladimir Putin. And Witkoff is essentially talking about the terms of a possible peace agreement with Ukraine. They start off and Yushakov then praises Witkoff, says your boss essentially did a good job. That's referring to the Gaza agreement. Witkoff says, look, we're thinking that we could get something along similar lines with Ukraine. But what I think has caused consternation is that Witkoff seems to be very much advising the Russians on how to handle the situation. Witkoff recommends that Yushakov tell his boss, obviously that's Putin, that he should give Donald Trump a phone call before their meeting with Vladimir Zelensky in the White House, and that Putin should call Trump a man of peace.
Remember when we had leaders like this, President Obama, keeping Vladimir Putin back on his heels? Yeah, Putin was not going to fuck with that. I'll tell you that much. Not that he wasn't trying, but he knew better than to cross an administration like the Obama administration. Trump is just the epitome of weakness. This entire regime is weak, pathetic, and did I mention weak? It's not America first, it's America last. His oligarchs are stuffing their pockets full of gold and treasure and dismantling our nation. They don't care what happens to us as long as they are richer than rich, leaving us without education, without healthcare, without food, without dignity, without our own natural resources. But here's some hopium. The European Union is fighting back hard. According to the chief of the National Bank of Ukraine, Kirill Shevchenko, he says that Brussels has unlocked a legal mechanism allowing indefinite freezing of Russian central bank assets without unanimous European Union consent, bypassing any Hungarian veto by citing, quote, economic disturbances caused by Russia's war on Ukraine. The EU now proposes transferring 210 billion euros to Kyiv in 2026 and 27, and then they will reallocate those Russian assets to use to defend Ukraine and pay back G7 loans. And the reason he mentions bypassing a Hungarian veto, because Hungary is part of the European Union, Viktor Orban, who is the leader of Hungary, is pro-Putin. He's essentially an autocrat. Of course, Trump loves him. So Hungary would be the one country that would veto. No, you can't do that. This allows a mechanism that's going to bypass autocrat-friendly Hungary and will allow the rest of the European nations to move forward with defending Ukraine and holding on to the EU in a good pro-democracy way. So this is great news if they're able to do that. And I think it's wonderful because Europeans know that their very safety, their survival is at risk. As Europe goes, so goes the rest of the world. MAGA heads don't realize this. And now here's some more kind of hopium. Now there's the almost $1 trillion defense budget for 2026 moving through Congress, which is pretty wild considering Congress is so quick to greenlight that kind of money for weapons, bombs, but then turns around and cuts healthcare, education, environmental protections, food assistance, and everything else that people in America need to literally survive, things we need to live, breathe, and survive. That said, the bill does include some provisions, bipartisan provisions that protect U.S. support for Ukraine. It has some built-in guardrails to stop Trump or other pro-Putin figures like Pete Hegseth from blocking arms deliveries, and it requires any sudden policy shifts to go through Congress. It even allows the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, the SACEUR, to flag any weapons deliveries that aren't being delivered. So he can say, hey, these weapons deliveries aren't making it over here, and we need to turn that around right quickly. So there are some good things that are built into that obnoxiously bloated defense budget. And I'll just wrap up on this. Liz Webster, who is a United Kingdom citizen, she wrote this, and I think it is just so spot on. I have to read it to you. The American far right isn't angry at Europe because of migration or free speech. I don't know. I might beg to differ just right there, but the rest of it is just perfect. They're angry because Europe disproves their worldview. Europe is the proof that civilization doesn't need cruelty to survive. Europe became the living proof that right-wing culture panic is nonsense. Europe, especially the European Union, commits the cardinal sin in MAGA world. It shows you can have welfare states, public health care, workers' rights, strong regulations, climate protections, secularism, and still have higher life expectancy, lower crime, fewer guns, better schools, and more stable societies. This embarrasses the U.S. right. It exposes the lie at the heart of MAGA ideology that social democracy equals decline. So they must manufacture a myth of, quote, civilizational collapse to defend American exceptionalism. That is so on target. It really nails the entire lying narrative of Fox News, of all the right wing, sphere of influence, all these paid Russian, people like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, the list goes on. They're constantly spewing out fear porn, that socialism and democracy is a bad thing when in fact it's the absolute reverse. People in the European Union are living longer. They have far better health outcomes. They're happier. They're more content. They do not have the gun violence and the murder rates that we do over here. Why? Because we have more guns in America than people. Fascists are trying to manufacture this fear porn that freedom and free speech and socialism is bad. It is a lie. Why do you think the Broligarchs came so hard for Zohran Mamdani or AOC or Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders? Because capitalists want us to be afraid of each other and of equality and of all of those good things because they want to rob us blind. And that's what they are doing with the ignorant MAGA people. That's why they want to make education scary, because the more you critically think, the more you learn that they are feeding people like that a crock of lies. It's all lies. And real freedom comes in allowing people to have equality and critical thinking skills. And the fascists hate that. The UK went with Brexit and left the European Union, and now they're hating it. A majority of people in the UK now want back in the EU because their country is not doing as well, right? Trump's racism and bigotry oozes out of him. And even more so as his dementia takes away any filters, like he as if he had any, but he had maybe a couple. And you can see it every time he opens his mouth. It's why you see these repeated attacks against female reporters. Every time he speaks of people with brown skin, Somalis, the mayor of London, it's just his overt and abject hatred of women and of people with skin that's not European white. He hates us. So the bottom line here is that Ukraine must be defended at all costs. So call your reps. Yes, especially if they're MAGA, and inform them. You have given away America's dignity and what we had here to a madman and his henchmen. And it's on you. Remind them, put them on notice, and your Democratic reps too, because we can't have any more of this corporate, capitalistic, Democratic bullshit. That's my opinion, but it's true. As always, remain fierce and really try to hold on to your peace in the midst of all this chaos. And I'll see you back here soon.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.